In many church circles, the word doubt feels like a confession. We're urged to just believe, to hold tight to our doctrines and avoid dangerous questions, as if asking were a slippery slope and perfect, unwavering certainty were the only proof of loyalty. But what happens when your real life, a grief that won't resolve, prayers that seem to go unanswered, scriptures that feel at odds with each other, collides with a tidy belief you simply inherited? Many sincere Christians end up juggling two different realities, a public certainty and a private, aching world of questions. The result so often is a brittle faith. It looks beautiful on the outside, but it's cracking on the inside. What if we've mislabeled the path? What if honest inquiry, not a cynical teardown, but a humble, courageous examination, doesn't weaken our faith at all, but actually strengthens it? What if the invitation of Jesus isn't to mute your mind, but to bring your whole self, your heart, your soul, and your mind into the light? At Peace Beyond Thought, we meet so many who are carrying unasked questions, tensions about doctrine, confusion about suffering, a mismatch between the creed they recite and the life they actually experience. Some feel guilty for even noticing the mismatch. Others, out of fear, just cling tighter, mistaking intellectual assent for spiritual maturity. But there is a gentler way, a faith that engages, a faith that listens and tests and refines, a faith that trusts God enough to ask Him anything, and then stays long enough to hear a deeper answer. In short, don't just believe, inquire. The goal isn't to dismantle your faith, it's to own it. It's about moving from a second-hand inherited belief to a first-hand resilient trust. Before we go further, a little clarity helps. We often blur these ideas together and end up suffering needlessly. First, let's look at beliefs. Beliefs are mental constructs. They are the doctrines, the interpretations, and the conclusions we accept as true. They guide our perception, and they can bless us immensely. But our beliefs are also, by nature, fallible. They are shaped by culture and by time. It is entirely possible to hold many correct beliefs about God without ever actually trusting God. Faith, on the other hand, is relational reliance. The biblical word pistis means trust and allegiance. It's the dynamic act of placing your weight on God's character and His promises, even when you don't have a complete understanding. Beliefs can inform your faith, but true faith transcends the merely cognitive. Then there is eBook. The kind of doubt that is often warned against is a hardened distrust, a settled refusal to rely on God. But that is completely different from inquiry. Inquiry is courageous engagement. It's examining your assumptions. It's wrestling with the tensions in Scripture like the Bereans did. Think of Jacob wrestling the angel, or Job questioning God, or Thomas needing to touch the wounds. Inquiry says, I want truth, and I want you, God, even if that means I have to refine what I thought I knew. Here is the key distinction. Questioning one of your beliefs is not the same as rejecting God. When we remember that our beliefs are just our best human attempts to describe an infinite reality, we gain the freedom to refine them. And in that process, our faith in the living God can actually become deeper. When never question is the rule, we either pretend to have a certainty we don't feel and fracture inside, or we end up leaving the faith altogether. But if we treat our beliefs as maps, useful, but not the terrain itself, we can gently revise the map when the terrain of God's love asks us to. That humility purifies, rather than threatens, our real faith. Contrary to our fears, honest inquiry, when done with a humble heart, can strengthen our faith in profound ways. First, it builds authenticity and ownership. Borrowed beliefs might carry you for a while, but it's the owned convictions that will carry you through a storm. Wrestling with a question turns "I was told" into "I have met Him here." Second, it cultivates intellectual humility. Inquiry forces us to acknowledge our limits, I don't know everything, and I don't need to. This humility guards us from a rigid, brittle dogmatism and keeps our hearts supple and open before the Spirit. You begin to rely more on God than on your own perfect systems about God. Third, it builds trust through encounter. When you bring your real, messy questions to God and you discover that He doesn't flinch, He doesn't punish you, He doesn't run away, that grows relational trust. Sometimes God gives you answers. Sometimes, more often, He just gives you Himself. Either way, your confidence in His presence rises. Fourth, it refines your faith. Let's be honest, some of the beliefs we carry are fear-based, or they're just cultural baggage. Inquiry is a refiner's fire. As false images of God burn away, like the image of a punitive-only God, or a God who demands perfection, the truth of His grace comes forward. What remains is lighter, truer, and freer. And finally, it gives you compassion for others. Once you have faced your own questions, you meet the questions of others with gentleness instead of fear. You become a safe person for seekers, reflecting the very patience God has shown to you. Now, this inquiry is powerful, and it must be handled with wisdom. There are guardrails. First, check your motivation. Ask yourself, am I genuinely seeking truth and deeper communion with God? Or am I just trying to avoid surrender, nurse my pride, or score points in an argument? Second, anchor in relationship. Keep one hand on the trunk of the tree while you examine the branches. Don't abandon the core practices of prayer, scripture, and worship. Let your questions move you toward God, not away from Him. Third, distinguish the core from the peripheral. Know the difference between the non-negotiable foundations of the faith, like the triune God, the life and resurrection of Christ, the reality of grace, the call to love, and the interpretive edges, like timelines, cultural customs, and non-essential debates. Fourth, seek wise companions. Don't wrestle alone. Find mentors, pastors, or spiritual directors who welcome honest questions. And fifth, embrace mystery and be patient. Not every knot unties on your timetable. A mature faith includes the capacity to trust God in the unresolved places. So how can you practice this? Try a belief inventory. Set aside 30 minutes. On a piece of paper, list some of your key beliefs about God's nature, your identity, or suffering. Next to each belief, just note how it feels. Does it feel life-giving? Mark it with a plus. Does it feel heavy, untrue, or harmful? Mark it with a dash. Does it just feel confusing? Mark it with a question mark. Pick one belief marked with a question mark or a minus sign. On a new page, write it at the top, and then just journal through these gentle questions. Where did I learn this belief? What fears come up if I question it? What deeper truth am I actually seeking here? And how does this belief affect my relationship with God and with other people? Close with a few minutes of quiet. Offer the belief, the questions, and your thirst for truth to God. Just pray, Spirit of Truth, guide me. Keep me close to Jesus as I learn. This isn't about toppling your faith, it's about tending it. It's about pruning what harms and nurturing what's true. The journey of faith is rarely a straight line of unbroken certainty. It is a living, breathing relationship with the living God. When you distinguish inquiry from cynical doubt, you gain permission to bring your whole self to Him. Your questions stop being threats and they become doorways. They become the very places where your brittle, inherited beliefs can soften and where God meets you, sometimes with wisdom and sometimes just with His presence while you wait. Don't just believe, inquire. That's what you've inherited. Wait what bears love and truth. Release what harms. Over time, you'll notice your faith is less performative and more personal, less fragile and more resilient. You'll be anchored not in a rigid system of answers, but in the unchanging character of the living God. If this reflection helped you find even a moment of stillness, subscribe for more weekly guidance from Peace Beyond Thought. And if you feel called to go deeper, you can explore our resources at peacebeyondthought.com. Remember, doubt your thoughts, trust the stillness, peace is already yours.